we are for another episode of The Cozy Corner of Cinema, episode number 190, being recorded on Friday, November 21st, 2025. The days are just getting chillier, man. Make sure that you are layering up. Make sure you have your defrosters on your car. I'm looking at the temperature in here, and it is 63 with a humidity level of 53. And actually, it has warmed up a bit since this morning. This morning was in the high 50s, and the humidity was in the high 40s. So with the sun out a bit, it's definitely getting a bit warmer, but I've had to put on the heat just for a little bit to get the chill out. But we're good. The cats are here. One of them's eating. The other one, I think, is playing with something in the other room. Everything's good. I hope you guys are good. I hope you guys are continuing working on your craft, continuing, the consistency of whatever you're working on. If you're trying to learn a song on an instrument, or trying to write a song, or write a book, write a screenplay, direct a film, direct a play, whatever it is, I hope you are staying true to yourself and staying consistent to your art, because results are not going to be instantaneous. You can look at the great artists, the great filmmakers, poets, writers, musicians, and they'll talk about their craft, and they'll talk about how many hours they got to really put into it to make a great film or write a great song or anything like that. Even if it doesn't turn out great, even if it's like, "Ooh, that wasn't a very good film," or that album wasn't very good, it's sort of like you learn from your mistakes, and you use that to perfect, to hone in your craft, to hone in your art for the next time, to perfect it as close as you can. But anyways, so last time I was talking about, I was going to talk about two films starring an actor I like quite a bit, and I'm going to, depending on the time, use some of the time to talk about some other 2025 films that I haven't discussed at this point. I have an episode planned for December, which will have a guest, and we'll discuss films from the year. So I want to talk about a couple right now that I haven't mentioned before on the show, but I wanted to talk about as being some of my favorites. And the last time I talked about briefly mentioning Josh O'Connor, and he has been in two of my very favorite films of the year. Josh O'Connor, you would remember from films like La Chimera, Challengers, and I looked, and it was true. He is going to be in the new Knives Out, which I will be seeing next week. And so he has two films. I'm going to talk about these briefly. I always say that, and then always ends up being most of the time. But this is my films I want to talk about, but I want to mention the one I saw first, and then the one I have seen the latest. And actually, these are the two back-to-back films he made. He also did a film called Rebuilding this year, which I have not had an opportunity to see. It has not been playing near me, but I saw the trailer for that a little while ago, and I'm definitely going to be on that when it becomes available. But a film that I straight up loved this year, The History of Sound, directed by Oliver Hermanus and written by Ben Shattuck. And I don't know what else. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was going to say I don't know what else they've done, but actually looking here, and I remember this, but I must have forgot. That's a contradictory statement. Oliver Hermanus directed the film Living from 2022, a remake of the film Ikaru from Akira Kurosawa, and Living is a really, really exceptional film. And Ben Shattuck, I am looking here, and I don't think... Okay, so he wrote the screenplay, and it's also based on the short story by. So that's fascinating. I should also say with The History of Sound, it is currently available to stream on Mubi, and it's also readily available to rent. And it's a film where I think the less... the less that is said, the better, because this is a case where, how do I want to put the trailer, I don't think did a very good job at selling it. This is a very quiet film, ironically with the title called The History of Sound. It's a very quiet film. It's a period piece, and it's during World War I, and we follow these two men, played by Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor. Paul Mescal you have seen in films like After Sun and Gladiator 2. He has a new film out, Hamnet, with that I'm very much looking forward to. I've talked about my love of Chloe Zhao's films, and I'm definitely be seeing that when the opportunity arises. But it's about, at first, their budding brief friendship that turns into a relationship. They're on this adventure, this journey of recording different people's songs and making a compilation of it. And then from there, that's the first half of the film. And the second half, it's not even necessarily to not give away anything, because it's nothing really to give away, but it's more so in that I think the film is definitely divided into a certain section. The first half is a section right there of these two guys' relationship with each other, and they're almost like touring through the countryside to do these recordings. And then from there, we kind of break off and do something else. It's a film that deals with memory. It deals with nostalgia. It deals with the idea of one person's vision against someone else's. It's a film about loneliness, and it with all these topics, it's never melodramatic. It's, like I said, it's a very quiet film. The characters don't need to tell you how they feel, which is a problem that I have with so many films now. There's no subtlety, but here there's so much subtlety. Just sometimes something as often as a facial reaction from Paul Mescal sort of says what he needs to convey. And we flash back to earlier scenes in the film, and we start to view what we've seen in different contexts leading to the third act, which I think if I did have any sort of, not even a gripe, I think there's essentially an epilogue into this that I don't know if it was totally necessary. It adds some closure to some things, but I think that there's a point where one of the characters is walking along a countryside, and there's a little bit of ambiguity there, and it's like, if it ended there, I think it would have been a lot more impactful. But the fact that they do an epilogue after that, I'm not with an actor I like quite a bit, Chris Cooper, who narrates some of the film. I don't know. I would be curious how the film would have been without that final 10 minutes. But that's a light blemish on a truly moving film. Just Paul Mescal is an actor who I know he's on that show. I think it's called Normal People or something People. I think it's called Normal People. I don't remember. I know it's like a Irish show, I believe, with Daisy Edgar Jones. I've never seen that show. I'm familiar with him from his films. So like, All the Strangers is another one that he did with Andrew Scott. Funny, talking about Blue Moon last week, and Andrew Scott is in Blue Moon as well. But Paul Mescal is an actor I like quite a bit, and he has to hold a lot of the film just on his own, and he does great. And he's a quiet actor. He gives a lot of quiet performances, I should say. He's got a lot of subtlety in his facial expressions. And he's fantastic in the film. I loved this film, and I hope that movie gives it a physical release, because I noticed in the U.S. they're not really doing it as often unless it's a big film, like The Substance, which received a Blu-ray and a 4K. But overseas, I know they're more active in putting out their releases. Even a film like Bird that they released didn't get a physical here, and it's a terrific film with another one of my favorite contemporary actors, Franz Rogowski, but it hasn't got a physical release here, so hopefully that'll come at some point. Maybe Criterion or someone will pick it up, or I don't know. But The History of Sound, wonderful, touching, incredibly mature film. That's something that I'm just looking for now. I'm looking for films with maturity, with characters I'm actually invested in and I'm actually emotionally attached to, and films that I don't need to rewatch for it to still be so prominent. I saw this maybe 2 months ago, and I still think about this film quite regularly. Yes, one of my very favorites of the year. I really, truly loved this film. And the other film that Josh O'Connor did, another film that was great, the new film from Kelly Reichardt, which is The Mastermind. And Kelly Reichardt's such an interesting filmmaker. She's someone who I've had sort of an up and down relationship with her films. I haven't seen all of her films. In fact, there's a couple big ones I haven't seen. There are some films of hers I like quite a bit, and others that I really don't. I will say that Showing Up from 2022 is probably my favorite of her work. I really, really enjoyed that film. And The Mastermind is also another really strong film from her. I love the look of the film, too. It's another period piece, and it has this washed out, very saturated sort of look to it that makes it feel more sincere as a period piece. Because you see films that are period pieces, and there's something about them that just doesn't click, where it could be either that the way the film was shot, or maybe you don't totally buy, the costumes or the music that just seems so cliche. Like, you watch so many period pieces, and they're playing like the hits from that era. They're not playing anything that people forget about. They're only like if it's an '80s film, they're gonna be playing a big '80s band, and that's not to say those songs weren't playing, but they're you can look back on when you're alive. Songs are popular 10 years ago, and then songs you remember that came out 10 years ago. But anyways, The Mastermind. Josh O'Connor. This is the early 1970s, and he is someone who is kind of slumming through life a little bit. He has a wife played by Alana Haim and 2 kids, and he's trying to go off and do his own thing. He decides to rob this museum in the middle of the day, and then the problems that come along with it. It's a very casual film, and it's one where the plot is there, but I think the second half of the film is a lot of wandering with Josh O'Connor's character. We kind of get the sense of he's leading a bit of an aimless life, even after this heist, even after this robbery, which that sequence is really well done. It's very comedic. There's a lot of comedy in this film, too, a lot of comedy that's really well done. But a lot of the dialogue between characters is very mannered, even when things start to get a little bit heavier. It never gets, too dark or anything, but even when things start to, there are some bigger kind of thematic sort of script decisions. It still has a really consistent, the word to say is mannered kind of tone, which is a vibe I get through a lot of Kelly Reichardt's films. A lot of characters are very, even when there's bigger events going on, characters are not manic. They're not, they're not obnoxious. Even films of hers like Meek's Cutoff or Wendy and Lucy, even when there are bigger issues going on in those films, the bigger conflicts, the characters still remain true to themselves, and it's not obnoxious. It doesn't give you a headache when you watch it. And this film as well, I just loved being with Josh O'Connor's character in this. I should say his character's name is James. And even just some of the interactions that he has with some of the other people. There's a great part where a guy goes to pick him up, and then the guy needs a ride home. And there's a part in the trailer that was where he calls Alana Haim's character at work, and she's just trying to whisper, and she just doesn't know why he can't just see the kids. It's just little nuanced moments like that where it's sort of out of context. You think what's so charming about that? But when you watch it in the whole of the film, it all works together and ends up being another highlight of Kelly Reichardt. It makes me want to fill in the gaps of her filmography that I haven't seen, because I know there's a couple big ones, like I said, that I haven't seen at the time of this recording. But another winner, man. I think Josh O'Connor is, like I said, I think he's just one of the great actors right now. He's just so charismatic, so enjoyable to watch in these films. And like I said, when I even talked about La Chimera on the show back when that first came out, and how good he was in that, how charismatic he was, and back to back just made 2 of my very favorites of the year. And I'm looking forward to watching the new Knives Out, Wake Up Dead Man next week. Hope he has a good role in that. But another actor who I like quite a bit, and this is going to lead me into a couple more films this year that I really liked, and I have about 15 minutes left or so. But if I have time, I'll talk about 3 films, but I'll most likely only have time to talk about these 2 films. But an actor that I like a lot is Austin Butler. Austin Butler, Academy Award nominee for Elvis. He is a solid leading man. If you remember him in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, playing Tex Watson, he's fantastic in that film. One of my very favorite films, and I mean, I know I throw that term around a lot. Favorite, this. One of my truly very favorite films of the last 15, 20 years is The Bike Riders, directed by Jeff Nichols, which unfortunately really kind of came and went, but I love that film, and he is just great in it. But 2 films this year I'll talk about. First one up is, and I'll do it in order of release, so I'm going to talk about Eddington, Ari Aster's 4th feature film, to my knowledge, because I think he did Hereditary, Midsommar, and then Beau is Afraid. He's also done some shorts and produces a lot of films, actually. You see his name pop up on quite a bit. But to my knowledge, I believe this is his 4th. Yes, I am correct. Eddington takes place, another period piece. That's not even intentional. Actually, the next film I'm going to talk about is a period piece. That is completely cool and unintentional, and I just realized that now. Wow, that is so cool, man. That is just awesome. This one takes place in 2020, at the beginning of the COVID lockdowns. It takes place in the small town in New Mexico, and tensions are running high. Joaquin Phoenix plays the main character in this. He's a small town sheriff. He's fairly dim-witted. He lives with his, I forgot if it was his ma or his wife. I do apologize. I saw this back whenever it came out in theaters. I think it's his ma. Yeah, I think it has to be. Anyways, he's living with her, and he is living with his daughter, and his family, they're really into conspiracies. They're really into, like, question everything stuff. And COVID is going on. The town's in lockdown. Joaquin Phoenix is really unhappy about it. And he's butting heads with Pedro Pascal's character, Ted, who is very pro, wearing the mask, staying 6 feet apart and all that. And tensions are slowly rising in this town. We primarily follow Joaquin Phoenix's character, who is being really kind of influenced by stuff he's seeing on his phone and stuff that's going on in the town. There are, protests and stuff. We follow an array of different characters, but Joaquin Phoenix is primarily the main character in this. But it is one where Ari Aster is a filmmaker who I wasn't the biggest fan of in terms of his films. I haven't seen Midsommar, so I can't say for sure. But I remember when I saw Hereditary, I remember the first, half I thought was really good. When it becomes a horror film is when it starts to lose me. And I didn't see Midsommar because it looked like more of the same. Like he's doing another of these kinds of films. And it didn't interest me. I didn't intentionally avoid it. I just never saw it, truthfully. And then I saw Beau is Afraid, which is a film that I'm still not fully on board with. But to me, it's what I talk about with Megalopolis, of a unique vision of its own, of him throwing everything and trying this weird, out there, almost experimental film. And there's a lot in that film I think is really good. And there's a lot in that film that doesn't work for me. And I think the reason why I'm far more interested in somebody like Ari Aster is that with Eddington, he is doing different kinds of films. I think this is probably his most comedic, but then it has those moments of violence, has those dark moments that makes you gasp and goes, wow. And because I just see so many filmmakers, and it's like so-and-so is doing this adaptation or this. And I'm not even dogging on these filmmakers. I'm not dogging on their craft at all. I'm just not interested in, because I get an idea of what they're doing. You're doing the same thing again and again and again and again. And that's fine if you like that. I'm not interested in that. I'm more interested in Ari Aster. Even if I'm not the biggest fan of all of his films, I go, he's a guy who is taking risks and doing different things. And Eddington was one that is my favorite of his work. It's a very funny, at times, like I said, dark and violent film with a really, really great lead performance by Joaquin Phoenix. He is so good in this film, and it's great to see this town really start the small town turn on one another, because they're not in a big city. They're relatively far and few between, spread apart, but they're all going on social media and reading the news and being directly influenced by that without any sort of context or any kind of outside source. So you have this one, like, the teenage girl who is very she's very, like, anti-cop. There's a part they're having, like, a protest in the middle of town, and she's telling, like, one of this black guy. She's saying, like, you should be with us. You should you should be on our side. You should be with them. Telling him how he should feel. And then on the flip side of that, you have, like, Joaquin Phoenix, who can be easily manipulated by whatever he sees online. So he's driving around with he's a great visual gag. His car says, like, "You're being manipulated. YOUR," and he has a bunch of stuff on his car. So it's everybody in this small town, no matter where they fall on the political spectrum, are all being influenced and basically brainwashed in a way. Very much like like real life this time. People, you go online and it's like, what's being posted on my favorite news site. Maybe you go on a certain news site, you go on Instagram, and you're like, oh man, this is tailoring my worldview without any sort of context. And it's a great. It's just a great look at the absurdity of the whole situation, of just how quick people are to turn on each other and become irrational and have no room for any sort of nuance. It's only black and white. It's only, you agree with me fully or you don't. And that's a problem that everyone had, no matter where you fall in the political spectrum. And it was interesting seeing kind of the reaction that this film got. A lot of people being very upset with the film. I remember when this first came out, I saw a headline that there was something like, "Why Eddington is the worst film of the year." And to me, no, like, I mean, I've seen some bad films this year, and I kind of got the sense. I didn't even read it. I just kind of got the sense the writer, wherever they fell on the political spectrum, probably didn't like what the film was saying, or maybe not. I didn't read it. I'm not gonna read it. But to me, I had such a fun time with this film. This does kind of fall into a problem that I do have with all of Astor's films that I've seen. Is I think it does run a little long. I think the third act does feel a little stretched out. And I like where it goes from the third act. That's when the violence really starts to ramp and things start getting really... it has a great mix of violence, and like dark violence, but then also comedy. There's one part that I still think about, makes me laugh out loud, involving somebody chasing down somebody with a cell phone. That just makes me laugh when I think about it. But then that gets very dark too. It's one that, I think... this is just a far more interesting film than somebody trying to say, how do I want to put this? I think when a filmmaker is making something that is aggressively what they fully believe, to me, that's less interesting. Whereas a film like this, I think by taking this general, like, looking at it from above and seeing the absurdity of this whole situation, and then riffing on that, I think that's far better than if somebody with a specific political idea in mind going after it. And there are films that I liked where even if I don't agree with the message, or I don't agree with what the filmmaker's saying, I still like those films. And to me, this is just far more interesting and nuanced when it's coming to these ideas. I don't think it's all great. I'm not saying this is like a masterpiece or anything, but I think with how much fun I had with it, and for someone like Astor to basically take the goodwill of his audience and throw it back in their face and say that this whole the whole thing was absurd, I just find that to be such interesting and bold filmmaking, and I really, really like this film. Like I said, it does run a little... Oh, and I was want to say Austin Butler is in the film. He has a small part. He's like this online sort of... not like a preacher, but he's a guy who's like, you're being manipulated, you're being lied to. He's like one of these things and he gets into contact with Joaquin Phoenix. And I wish he had been more in the film. It feels like if I had a criticism there, it'd be that his character feels a little underdeveloped. But with that said, it's just a really fun film. And in terms of 2025 films, I think this is the one that feels the most current, ironically, because it's not even just about COVID, but it's about people being so in their ways that they can't even see the other point of view. But anyways, solid film. I thought it was great. And the other film of Austin's I wanted to talk about is one that really unfortunately came and went. And I love this film, and it's called Caught Stealing, directed by Darren Aronofsky. And again, like I'm talking about with Ari Aster, Darren Aronofsky just doing different kinds of films. You know, I think he kind of got pigeonholed into somebody who made like really dark films, because he did stuff like Requiem for a Dream and The Wrestler. You know, those are dark films. But then, you know, I mean, I was a big fan of Mother. I talked about Pi on the show. That's one of my favorite films of '98. And this is so out of left field for him to do this dark comedy crime film. And it's a great balance, because it has a lot of really good comedy, but then the stakes are real. Characters get killed off, and even characters you're kind of joking with and are kind of, you know, funny, they're still dangerous characters, and the film never loses that. And Austin Butler is holding down the film, and man, he is phenomenal in this. I should also say Matt Smith has a small role in this film. He's the one who kind of incites everything. He drops off his cat at his character Hank, played by Austin Butler's house. And Hank kind of lives like a quiet sort of life. He's a bartender, and he has a relationship with Zoe Kravitz's character. His name I'm trying to find right here. I don't know her name. And it's really just like kind of a sexual relationship, and she wants to like get more out of it, but he's kind of like on the fence. And he's watching this guy's cat. And then where it goes, like I said, it gets dark, but it also is very funny. It has this great pace, and it's a period piece as well. It takes place in the 90s, I believe, in the 90s in New York. So, a lot of the shots, a lot of the scenery, you just look in the background to see the different signs and billboards and all that, and it all comes together so great. This was one that it was such a shame that I don't think it did too well, and to have this balance between very funny, which I think Aronofsky is actually pretty solid at comedy. I don't know. I'm trying to think what other kind of lighter films he's done, because all of his films are fairly dark. I think this is definitely the lightest that he's made. Because I'm looking at stuff like The Whale and Mother, and these are darker films, and Mother I think is a terrific film as well. Actually, I could have talked about another film with Jennifer Lawrence this year, Die My Love, but I'll hold off on that for another time, because that's another film I really quite liked. But yeah, it was great, and the conclusion of the film, it just wrapped it all together so nicely. I just had so much fun with this film, and this was one that I'm like, if there's a film to like see in a theater, like this would have been great with an audience. I didn't really see it with many people in the crowd. And it's a shame, because this definitely feels like something that you would catch on HBO or something, or you'd catch and be like, whoa, this is like a gem. This, people talk about gems. It's like something like this, where it's just like, unfortunately, it kind of comes and goes, but you're like, it has big stars in it, but no one saw it. Like, what is this? And I really enjoyed this film. And Austin Butler has just become, like Josh O'Connor, has become one of my favorite actors working. And like I said, I can't stress enough, The Bike Riders was just a great film. I've seen that film twice now, and I straight up just love that film, and I hope Jeff Nichols does another film, because I missed the one he did before that. I think the film was called Loving, with Joel Edgerton. Yes, that's right. I don't think I've seen that film, or at least I think he did that one. I don't remember. I should have looked it up, but I'm not gonna, because I'm being kind of lazy. But that'll do it for this episode. I could probably crammed in another film to talk about briefly, but I think it's a good kind of pairing of these four films: 2 Josh O'Connor films, 2 Austin Butler films, 4 period pieces: The History of Sound, The Mastermind, Eddington, and Caught Stealing. And that will do it for this episode of the Cozy Corner of Cinema. Thank you all for listening. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day or night whenever you're listening to this. Drink plenty of water. If you're in a cold climate, make sure you are heating up your car. Or if you're listening to this in the future and it's the middle of summer, then make sure you're staying cool. That's all I got, guys, so thank you once again.